guys, welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you're new. My name's Heather. I'm a queer author of dark fantasy and young adult paranormal, and today is going to be my sort of TBR for July, but also the rest of the year, because I am titling my July TBR Just Read the Damn Books. Over the course of the first 6 months, I went back and looked at all my TBRs and videos that I had listed of authors I really wanted to read, and have found out that I have 25 plus books that I have not read, that I said I would read, or from authors I said I would. I have broken this down into adult books and young adult books, and then I will talk about the genre of the books and give you a quick synopsis. So please let me know down in the comments down below which books you have read this year off this list that you've really enjoyed, and while you're down there, why not think about giving this video a thumbs up, because it really helped my channel, and subscribe if you haven't already, because I put out videos twice a week that are about reading and writing. So let's dive on in. So I'm going to go with the adult books because it's a shorter pile, a littler pile. So the first one I have is Naomi Novik's A Deadly Education, which is the first book in a duology of the Scholar series, and this follows a magical school where Elle Higgins has a potential of destructive magic. She's a bit of a loner, and you go through some of the education. In the second book, I know that they have to basically fight each other and fight all the monsters in the school to actually graduate, and looking forward to this one. I have Angel's Flight by Nalini Singh, and this is a bind up of novellas in the Guild Hunters. There you go. The Guild Hunters series she has. So it's a paranormal romance. I believe there's a bit of smut in this one. And on my Buzzwordathon, which is run by Books and Lala, and I've made a list of books that I would recommend for it, is Wicked, which is the Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West, which is book 1 in the series. And it's basically how the Wicked Witch of the West, Alphaba, became it. It's the novel that the Broadway musical Wicked's based on, so I greatly appreciate that. I also prefer villains, so this is basically a villain origin story. Gregory Maguire. So Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca, and this follows a young woman who is the second wife of Maxim de Winter, and she's taken to his Cornish estate, and the atmosphere in his estate is quite oppressive, and there still is a real big presence of the first wife called Rebecca. So this is sort of it's a classic, and it also is sort of a thriller-esque. This would be a reread, but I read it well over 10 years ago, so I'll probably be going into it fresh. I then have the Beastly Book Club book choice for January and February, which I just didn't get to, and that's War and Peace by Leo Toystol. It's a chunker. It's about Napoleon's war with Russia, about the history, and a cast of over 500 characters. That's not going to get confusing at all. So we'll be hopefully getting into that. We have Ariane by Jennifer Saint, the daughters of King Minos, the princesses grew up hearing a terrible bellows of the Minotaur in the labyrinth that lies down below. But the other thing is Ariadne's brother is the Minotaur. So it's basically a reimagining of the Minotaur in the Labyrinth retelling, Greek mythology. I just have 2 more adult books, and then we'll be going on to the young adult. Susan Collins' Piranesi, and this just sounds like a wickedly weird spinny-winny book. Basically, Piranesi has always lived in the house, and perhaps he always would. He walks around with his notebook day after day, taking a record of the statues that are in this house, as well as the West Wing floods occasionally. So it sounds a bit bizarre and interesting. And then I have Selena Moreno Garcia's Mexican Gothic, which is it won the 2020 Goodreads Choice Award for horror, so I would say horror thriller. It's 1950, set in a big Mexican mansion. A young woman receives frantic letters from her newlywed cousin, and she goes down to the mansion to see what's happening. And then I'm moving on to the young adult. Majority of these are fantasy because I read a lot of fantasy, but I'll quickly run through the Maggie Stiefvater books that I have on it. So I have the Scorpio races, which is a standalone where basically every November in autumn there is a harsh race that occurs. The horses are on the beach in a pale road between the black waters and the chalk cliffs, and basically they race. And there's a young woman that takes part this year. And basically the tagline is some riders live, others die. And then I have book 2 and book 3 of the Raven Boys cycle. So it's Dream Thieves and then Blue Lily Blue. These also came up on my Buzzwordathon video, so I'll link that up in the cards if you would like to go see that. I then have a manga. So this is the black edition of Death Note, which has volumes 3 and 4 in it. I was meant to read this for Asian Readathon. I took it to Tasmania with me in May, and I just got too busy to read it and pick it up, so I will. The other young adult horror I have on my list is Wilder Girls. So basically there is a school on an island, there is something called the Tox that breaks out, and it's put into quarantine, and there is a sapphic relationship in this, and it also has body horror elements. Then I have The Deathless Girls by Kieran Millwood Hargrave, and this is a retelling of the Dracula's Wives. I just really like it. It's one of the most beautiful books I own. Other than that, I don't know much about it. I just want to read it. Then I have the book 1 in the Curse Breakers series by Bridget Camille, and that is A Curse So Dark and Lonely, and this follows Prince Wren, who is the heir of Emberfall, and Harper, who is a girl who lives in Washington DC and has cerebral palsy and falls into the portal. So it's a Beauty and the Beast portal retelling situation. I then have Vicious, which is V.E. Schwab. So I believe this is young adult, correct me if I'm wrong. Basically, Victor and Eli started out as brilliant, arrogant college students and friends, and they figured out how to become, or basically they get supernatural powers from near-death experiences, and then it's 10 years later and they've become mortal enemies. I then also have Girl of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor, and this is a somewhat of a portal fantasy as well. This is also some of my friends' favourite stories. So Karoo is a girl that can go between the underworld and our world. It's set in Prague. This book also appears on my 15 books that will self-destruct by the end of the year, I believe the title. So basically I went onto Goodreads and looked at my the books that were added to my TBR the longest ago, and I have basically said if I don't read them by the end of the year, they must be removed. I'm pretty sure the Raven Boys is also on that, so I'll link that up in the cards for you as well if you're interested. I then have Beneath the Sugar Sky by Sean Maguire, which is the 4th book in the Wayward Children series, and this follows a child of the character we meet in the first book who falls out of her door and into the Eleanor West's Home for Wayward Children. Self-published book, which is The Crowning by Natty Kate Mason, and this follows 3 queens who are heirs to a kingdom that are all gifted, but they must choose. So we have a shape-shifting prince, a fire-wielding princess, and a healer, and a princess called Agnes. And I know that there is a series that follows after this that is just released as well. This is young adult, and the new series is an adult series. I then have another graphic novel, which is Nimona. Now, I'm not sure, and this is a shape-shifting dragon called Nimona, who is also the sidekick to the supervillain Lord Blackheart. I know, I've been told half a dozen times it's really good, so it's on my shelf. I've said I will read it. I need to read it. I then have Legendborn by Tracy Dion, which is the first book in a series of an ethereal inspired story. Brady Matthews witnesses an accident that kills her mother, and then she ends up at a residential program at the University of North Carolina, and then she witnesses something on campus that's a magic attack, and then uncovers a secret society, and things go on from there. And it's called the Merlin Society, and it turns out that the Merlin Society and the magic on campus may have had something to do with Bree's mother's death. The Bone Shard Daughter by Andrea Stewart, and this is a Asian inspired story about Lin, who is the Emperor's daughter, who is going to lose the status as heir to the Empire. So she undertakes studies and uncovers some stuff about the magic that is bone shard magic. So each person in the Empire has a piece of their bone removed. I also have been told there is LGBT representation in this one. I then have These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong, which is a 1920s reimagining of Romeo and Juliet with magic. I have also now been told that there may be a transgender character in this book, and the second book, which is Our Violent Ends, or Our Delicious Ends, is releasing later this year. So I really need to get onto this so I'm not too far behind everyone else. Rin Chipeko was on that list of authors I really want to read this year. So I have ticked her off, but I keep saying I want to read this book because I have the whole series. So I keep picking it up, so I'm going to eventually have to try and get to it. And that's The Bone Witch, which is a necromantic witch tea who uses her magic. And there's something about a beast is raging and punctures the air with its spines. Don't know much about it, but really enjoyed The Never Tilting World by Rin Chipeko. So I will be getting to this, hopefully. Story in Girl Serpent, Thorn by Melissa Dashaburtz. So the story begins with the princess cursed by a poisonous to be poisonous to the touch, but for Sandra, who lives her life hidden away from everyone apart from her family, safe only in her gardens, that it's not just a story. On the day of her twin brother's wedding, Sonia must decide if she's willing to step outside the shadows for the first time. Below in the dungeon is a demon who has knowledge that she craves, and the answer for her freedom. So, is she a princess or a monster? Sounds intriguing to me. Sherwood by Megan Spooner, which is a reimagining of Robin Hood, where Robin of Luxley is dead, and we follow Maid Marian, who takes up the hood. 3 more books, and one of them I am going to be picking up this evening in June, so technically I would have started it. And that one is Dreadnought. I had picked this up, and I keep saying I need to read it. It's been on about 5 different TBRs in the last 2 years, so we'll be getting to it. And this is by April Daniels. It is a Own Voices transgender superhero story. So Danny Toza has a problem. She has just inherited the powers of Dreadnought, the world's greatest superhero. Basically, Dreadnought comes crashing to Earth. In front of Danny, with their dying breath, they instill the mantle to her, and their second-hand powers transform Danny's body into one that she's always wanted, but now she can't hide that she's a girl. Okay, and then just 2 more, and I have The Gilded Ones by Nalini and Outcast by Blood Warriors by Choice. So in this world, girls come of age and have their blood tested, and if it runs red, they're safe and allowed to stay within the village. If it runs gold, they are cursed and sent out to die. A person approaches our main character at the end and says, "You can come with me and live," and then trains them as warriors. Last of all, this one keeps coming up, and it's the Girls of Paper and Fire. So I believe most people know about what this is. This is basically every year 8 girls are chosen to be concubines to the Demon King. So I also have the second book in this, which is Girls of Storms and Shadows, or Shadows and Storms. And I believe there is a 3rd book in this series. This book, so I really need to get to these. So these are 20-something books that I have said I will read in the first half of 2021, and I haven't, so I will be trying to get to at least 15 of them. So I will link those videos down below in the comments as well. Let me know some books that you have been meaning to read in the first half of the year that you haven't quite got around to. I would love to know. And until then, let's use our voices to promote positive change in the world. Thank you and goodbye!